A mannequin wearing a colorful suit and sporting a globe-like head bends forward, throws its arms back, and attempts to balance a tower of beautifully patterned cakes on its back. It's a precarious balancing act. The cakes are on the verge of falling, but remain suspended in time. Who is this cake man, and why are we looking at him? What is the artist trying to communicate through this sculpture? What is your impression of it? Is it just a playful pastry party, or is the artist using it to communicate something else entirely? This week you were introduced to the principles of design and asked to apply them toward an analysis of this contemporary mixed media sculpture. As you can see, our discussion of these visual forms are becoming increasingly more complex, as are the potential meanings of these objects. The principles of design depend on the visual elements, which all add up to a compositional whole and reinforce the expressive content of the work. So hang on to your knowledge of the visual elements, and we will see how they come into play as we analyze Shonobare's use of the principles of design. As a reminder, the main principles of design covered in this class are unity and variety, balance, emphasis and focal point, rhythm and pattern, and scale and proportion. As in our discussion of the visual elements, each of the principles of design has its own characteristics and terminology that must also be applied toward an analysis of an artwork. For example, as in our discussion of actual or implied mass, balance can be actual or pictorial. In actual balance, an object can literally stand on its own. In pictorial balance, we are looking at the depicted balance in a two-dimensional representation. The balance can either be symmetrical, where the sides correspond in form or arrangement, as in this butterfly, or asymmetrical, where there is variation from one side to another, as in this building. Other types of balance include horizontal, vertical, radial, and occult. Please see the lecture in your resources for this module for other examples of this type of balance. When considering scale and proportion, we look at both the size of the object or images within the object, as well as their proportion or relationship among parts of the whole. Here is an example of hierarchical scaling, where the sizes of the figures in this relief carving are distorted in order to communicate the importance of the larger figure on the left. This was common practice in ancient objects, in particular Egyptian art, to which this palette belongs. Egyptian artists also tended to follow a canon of proportions, or a set of rules about the relationship among parts of the body, in order to create a standard of representation of the human form. This is also evident in this relief carving. The golden mean refers to the proportional relationships among parts of an image or object. You can see this in this Seurat painting below left. All of these principles contribute to the sense of order and balance in an image. Returning to Shonobare's sculpture, we can observe how the artist's use of unity and variety contributes toward the expressive content of the whole. There is unity and variety in the repetition of colors and shapes. Notice the repeated use of circular forms, a circular base, cylindrical cakes, and the spherical head. There is also continuity in the arrangement of cakes in the tower. We can also see a variety in many different colors used, as well as the different size of cakes in that tower. All of this contributes both to the visual unity of the sculpture, as well as its conceptual unity, an idea or message that the artist is trying to communicate. In terms of balance, the sculpture can be described as having actual balance because it is a three-dimensional object that can stand on its own, as opposed to a two-dimensional representation. The balance can also be described as asymmetrical because the sides don't perfectly match up or correspond. Notice how this is demonstrated with the application of the red line, which runs down the center of the object vertically. Still, you could say that the sculpture is balanced, as opposing sides have mostly equal distribution of weight. This creates horizontal balance, which is still potentially imbalanced because of the suggestion of movement created by the cakes on the verge of falling. While your subjective reaction to the sculpture may direct your attention to different focal points, we can also see how the artist accentuates certain features in order to deliver his message. For example, the head is dark in value, differently textured, and shows intricate detail. Also, the cakes are highly detailed, which invites close looking, and are arranged in a strong vertical line which captures the viewer's attention. Clearly, the sculpture contains a wide variety of patterns, from the pants to the jacket to the individual patterns of the cakes. Initially, this may appear jarring to the eye. However, they all appear to contribute to a visual rhythm that moves the viewer's eye throughout the sculpture. Also consider how this rhythm contributes to the overall expressive content of the work. Does it heighten the feeling of impending chaos? Imagine what those patterns would disintegrate into once this tower of cakes collapses. Lastly, we can discuss the sculpture's use of scale and proportion. Looking at the sculpture in a museum along other sculptures and people, we can get a better sense of its scale. The mannequin itself is life-size compared to an average adult. However, with the addition of the tower of cakes, the scale appears large and imposing. All of the features of the mannequin and cakes are in relative proportion to one another. So now that we have analyzed the principles of design in Cake Man, have we arrived at any understanding of its meaning? Have you? This can be difficult when considering a work that is so conceptually driven or rooted in a central idea. However, in observing the use of pattern, focal point, and balance, certain ideas are communicated. Consider the potential symbolism of using cake to suggest something that is unstable. Cake can signify a celebration or a sweet treat, but it can also potentially signify indulgence and greed, and that is exactly what Shonibari intended. As Shonibari stated in the Guardian article, provided as a link here, "It's my tribute to bankers." Hence the representation of the stock market on the head. In this sense, the sculpture serves as an allegory, an image that reveals a hidden meaning, typically a moral or political one. There is no doubt that Shonibari is delivering a warning about the dangers of greed and excess and how unsustainable this kind of world might be. That wraps up our discussion of the principles of design. Like before, please ask if you have any questions or need clarification on any of these concepts. Thanks.